I'd been blaming it on a raccoon for almost 3 weeks before the exterminator I finally called came down the ladder without his work light, stood very still in my hallway, and told me to step out onto the front lawn and call the police. I'm not going to give you my name. I'm 34. I dispatch freight, nights mostly, so my clock is turned all the way around. I sleep when the sun's up, and I'm awake when the rest of the street isn't. I took the rental because it was $80 under what the street was asking. 1 bedroom, a little pull-down hatch in the hallway, ceiling that I never once opened. I'd just come out of a divorce that took everything else, and a cheap quiet house felt like the one thing finally going right. The sound started maybe a week after I moved in. Soft, up and to the left, over the bedroom. A drag, then quiet. A settle, then quiet. I told myself raccoon, because that is the thing you tell yourself. And I mean it. I sat up at 2 in the morning watching videos of raccoons in attics, so I could match the sound, and some of them were close enough that I let it go. But here's the part one noticed, and then spent a month trying to unnotice. It only ever happened after I shut the lights off. Never while I was up moving around. It waited for the house to go dark, every single time, like it was listening for the switch. Then little things stopped adding up. A loaf of bread I'd swear I bought, just gone. Half a jar of peanut butter lighter than it should be. I blame my own head. Honestly, night shifts scramble you. You lose track of what's real and what's Tuesday, and it is so much easier to think you are forgetting groceries than to think the other thing. One morning there was a phone charger plugged into the outlet at the end of the hall. A white cable. I don't own a white cable. I unplugged it, set it on the kitchen counter, and stood there feeling stupid. The next day it was gone from the counter, back in the wall. That's when I should have left. I know that now, but you don't in the moment. You build a version where it's fine. Maybe I plugged it in half asleep after a shift. Maybe the landlord came by with a key and didn't say. You will invent a whole landlord with a whole key before you'll let yourself think there is a person living in your house. There were other things I filed away without really filing them. A single muddy print on the kitchen tile one morning. Half a shoe. The toe pointed at the fridge, and I had it wiped up before I'd even decided it was strange, because the version where it was strange was a version I couldn't live in. The pipes would run at odd hours, a little rush of water in the wall, and I'd think, old house. And the neighbor's cat, this fat orange thing that ignored every human alive, started sitting on my back fence staring up at my roofline. Not at me. At the eave, up under the gutter. An hour at a time, dead still. I'd wave at it, and it wouldn't even blink. Then the smell. I don't smoke, never have. My dad died of it, and I held it against the whole habit my entire life. But some nights the hallway smelled like a cigarette had been put out in it. Faint, sweetish. Just enough to make me stand there in the dark sniffing the air like an idiot, telling myself it was drifting through the vents from the neighbors. There was one night, maybe 4 days before the closet, that I have never told anybody in full. I woke up around 3 needing water, and I lay there in the dark, and I heard it move. Not a settle this time, not a drag. A step, the careful kind. Weight going down slow onto a board and easing back off it. The way you walk when you do not want to be heard, when you already know which board's allowed. It crossed from over the bedroom to over the hallway, slow, and then it stopped, directly above me, and it stayed. I lay flat on my back, not breathing, my eyes open in the black, and I counted my own heartbeats, waiting for it to move again, and it did not move for what had to be 20 minutes. It was listening to me the way I was listening to it. Then it eased back the way it had come. I told myself in the morning that I dreamed it. I had not dreamed it. I have never once in my whole life dreamed a sound that specific, that patient, that close. What finally broke me was the hall closet. I keep almost nothing in there, a vacuum, a winter coat I haven't worn since I moved down near Macon. I was digging for a flashlight, and behind the boxes, shoved flat against the back wall, there was a camping mat, one of those blue foam rolls, unrolled. And there was a shape pressed into it, the long kind, the kind a person leaves. I put my hand flat on it before my brain could stop my arm, and it was warm, not room warm. Warm like somebody had been lying on it a minute before I opened that door. There was a water bottle tucked into the corner with the label peeled off, and the cigarette smell was stronger down low, right there, like I held breath. I did not run. Nobody believes that part until it happens to them, but I didn't run. I froze. And then I very quietly closed that closet door, like being polite about it would help. And I walked out to my truck and sat in the driveway with the engine running for 2 hours, telling myself I'd imagined the warmth of it. I slept at a motel that night, and the next, and the one after. And then I called the exterminator the way a coward calls a professional, so somebody else would be the one to go up there and say the thing out loud. He went up to pull down with a work light. He was up there maybe 40 seconds. I stood at the bottom of the ladder, and I heard him go still, and stillness has its own sound when you're waiting underneath it. It is the loudest thing there is. When he came down, his hands were not working right. He couldn't get them to let go of the ladder rails. He looked at me and said, real quiet, like he didn't want to be overheard, "There's a man up there." And then he said, "He's awake. He's looking at me." The police pulled a guy out of my attic who had been living in it the better part of a month. A sleeping bag laid flat over the insulation. Water bottles lined up along the rafter in a neat little row. He'd stripped a wire off my hall light to keep his phone charged. He'd written down the nights I worked and the nights I was home, and the time the house went dark each night. To the minute, because he'd been lying 8 feet above my bed in the dark, listening for the switch. He went to prison. I don't think about the man much, honestly. I've tried, and he just isn't there. He's a blank shape to me. What I think about is the 3 weeks before the closet. How fine I felt. Coming home, heating up dinner, falling asleep easy under all of it while he lay up there, counting me down into sleep. I've rented 2 places since. First thing I do now, before the box is even coming off the truck, I open every attic, every closet, every door that goes anywhere dark, and I leave a light on up there. Every single night. The power company can hate me. He told the detective the light was the only thing that ever made him hold still.
The draft was coming from inside the closet, and closets are not supposed to have a wind. That was the first wrong thing. A thin, cool breath of air sliding out from behind my hanging clothes, in the middle of July, in a building with no air conditioning to speak of. By the way, I'm Maeve. I was 26. I clean teeth for a living, so I notice small wrong things for a living too. It's the same muscle. You spend all day hunting the one spot that doesn't match. The apartment was the first place my boyfriend Sam and I had that was just ours. Top floor of an old 3-story, in a part of town we couldn't really afford, except somehow we could, because the rent was a joke. We told each other we'd gotten lucky. People who get the cheap place always tell each other that, right up until they find out why it was cheap. I traced the draft back that first week the way you'd chase a leak. Push my coats to one side. And up in the corner of the closet ceiling there was a square. A panel, painted the same flat white as everything else so it nearly vanished, with a little finger notch cut into one edge. It was not on the walkthrough sheet, and I am the kind of person who keeps the walkthrough sheet. Sam said attic access. Every building has one, and he was right that every building has one. He just wasn't right about this one. We left it alone for about a month. I'd like to tell you we forgot about it, but you don't forget a door you can't explain. You just stop looking at it on purpose. Then the noises started giving us a reason to look. Not loud. A settling. A shift of weight. And then the very specific creak a floor makes when something on it moves, and then decides to hold still. Always after midnight. Sam started saying it was the building cooling down, and I started saying yeah, probably, and neither of us believed the other one. And that's a thing that happens in a relationship before anybody admits the real thing. You trade comfortable lies across the pillow. There was a day, before any of this had a shape, when I came home early from a shift and stopped dead in the doorway because something was wrong, and it took me a full minute to find it. A kitchen chair. It was pulled out from the table and turned, just slightly, to face the hall closet, the way you'd leave it if you'd been standing on it, and stepped down in a hurry. Sam swore on everything he hadn't touched it. We actually laughed about it, honestly, made a joke about a ghost who really liked our closet, and I carried the chair back to the table and didn't think about it for weeks. I think about that chair now more than almost anything in this whole story. He had been standing on it when I came up the stairs. He had heard my key in the lock. And he had gone back up through that square in the ceiling fast enough and quiet enough that the only thing he left behind was a chair turned a few degrees toward the closet and a girl who laughed about it. Sam went up first, because that's the deal you make without ever making it out loud. He stood on a kitchen chair and pushed his phone up through the panel with the flashlight on, and I watched his face instead of the screen, and his face is what I remember. It just emptied out. All the color in it went somewhere else. It was a crawl space low, running the length of our unit, and someone had made it into a room. There were candles, the cheap kind, burned down in their own wax to little black drowned wicks. There were soda bottles a whole row along a beam, our brand, the off-brand cola from the Kroger down the block that we bought because it was $1 less. There was a blanket folded into a careful square in the corner, folded better than I fold mine. And there was a smell up there I'm not going to describe except to say it was the smell of a person who had been somewhere a long time, and it rolled down out of that square and into our bedroom, and I finally understood what the draft had been carrying all month. And propped on the beam, pointed down through the panel toward the foot of our bed, there was a baby monitor, the parent unit, the little half you carry around with you, its power light still a soft, steady green. He had been lying up there listening to us sleep. We told ourselves a previous tenant. Storage, junk, somebody's mess the landlord never cleared. That story held up about 6 hours. Then I was putting laundry away, and I found, on the shelf in our own closet, tucked between 2 folded towels, a photograph. A printed photo. Glossy. Recent. It was of Sam and me, asleep, in our bed, taken from above us and a little to the left. Taken from the— I need you to understand the math of that because it took me a full minute and then it took my knees out. We had not been robbed. Nothing was ever missing. The cola in that crawl space was being replaced by us every single grocery trip because we kept buying more and never once noticed it ran out faster than 2 people drink it. The candles burned while we slept. He had not broken in, not once. There was nothing to break. He had moved in. He came down into the part of the apartment we thought was ours when we left for work, and he went back up before we got home, and the only trace was a remote in the wrong place, a draft, a cola we drank faster than we should have. We'd had a roommate the whole time. We'd just only ever seen the dishes. Sam wanted to go up there with a bat. I wanted to leave that night with the dog, and nothing else. We compromised on the worst possible option, which was a camera, a little stick-on thing pointed up at the closet panel because we had to know, and we were young, and we still believed that knowing a thing protects you from it. It fed to Sam's phone. We sat in a diner 2 blocks away at 1 in the morning and watched the inside of our own closet on a cracked screen, and at 3 the panel opened. From the inside, a bare foot came down first, feeling for the shelf, slow, the toes spreading to test the weight, the way a man moves when he has done this 100 times in the dark and knows exactly where the quiet boards are. We called the police from the booth. They went in, and the landlord, when they finally got him on the phone at 4 in the morning, said a sentence I have never once been able to forgive him for. He said, "Oh, the previous tenant. He never gave back his key and he wouldn't leave, so I just stopped renting the unit and let him think he'd won, figured he'd get bored eventually. He had told us nothing. He handed us a cheap apartment and the man who came with it, and he cashed our checks every first of the month. We moved in a week. I left half our things in that place, the couch, the dishes. I didn't care. I was never walking up those stairs again. And here's what stayed with me, the small, ridiculous thing that turns out not to be small at all. Sam slept fine after a while. He has that gift. I never did. Anywhere we have lived since, the first night before I will let myself close my eyes, I drag a chair over, and I open every closet, and I stand on the chair, and I look up at the ceiling. Sam used to tease me about it. He doesn't anymore. He just holds the chair.
The camera caught him at 3:40 in the morning, walking out of my own hallway like he paid rent, unhurried. He even stopped at my thermostat and looked at it, the way you check the weather. I had been living with him for 2 months, and that one clip, was the first time I ever saw his face. I'll call myself Aaron. I'm 38, I edit video for a living, freelance, which means I sleep when the work lets me. A few hours in the afternoon, and a few before dawn. Scattered. I bought the house at a county auction outside Tulsa, for less than a used car costs. 2 stories, a foreclosure, sitting empty for a year. Everybody told me empty houses are a gift in this market. What I tell people now is that nothing actually sits empty for a year. Something always moves into the quiet. You just don't always find out what. It started as a feeling, and I know exactly how that sounds. So let me be precise about the feeling, because it wasn't a mood. It was physical. I would wake up in the afternoon, in a bright room, with the very specific sense that someone had just left it. The air would still be moving a little, the way it does right after a door closes. And there'd be a patch of warmth on the floorboards by the bed, body warm, on a cold board, in the shape of where 2 feet would stand. The first handful of times I told myself it was a dream stitching itself onto the waking part. I am very good at telling myself things. It is a genuine talent, and it very nearly got me killed. Then it got specific. The way these things do once you actually start letting yourself look. My remote, the TV remote, kept turning up on the wrong arm of the couch. I'm a creature of habit, left arm, always, and it kept showing up on the right. A glass of water, half drunk, on the counter, that I had not poured and would not have left there. The trash worked out to less than I put in it, like someone was taking some of it away to keep the bags from filling, which is the kind of thoughtful that makes your skin crawl once you understand it. And the door to the attic, up at the end of the upstairs hall, the one I kept shut because the latch was bad, kept easing itself open. I close it. Days later, open. So I started leaving it cracked at the exact same width every time. A hand's width, so I could measure it. And it moved. Something kept moving it. So I taped it shut. A strip of painter's tape across the seam. And the tape kept tearing from the inside. I'm the kind of person who has to see a thing before he'll believe it. So I did the worst brave thing a person can do in that situation. I didn't leave. I bought a security camera, the cheap kind that lives in a corner and talks to your phone, and I put it in the upstairs, hall pointed at nothing in particular, and I went to bed like every other night, and I let it watch the dark while I slept in it. The first night gave me 11 minutes. I am going to spend the rest of my life trying to unsee. The camera only records motion, so in the morning there were just a couple of clips waiting. One was a moth. The other was 30 seconds past 2 in the morning, and it was my own bedroom doorway, and there is a figure standing in it. A man, standing perfectly still, just inside my room, facing the bed, facing me. He does not creep, and he does not search, and he does not take anything. He stands there, and he watches me sleep. The clip is short, but the camera logged how long the motion had lasted before he moved again, and it was 11 minutes. 11 minutes of a man standing over me in the dark, while I had no idea I had a face anymore, while I was just a thing breathing on a bed. Then he turns calm, and he walks back up the hall, and it ends. I watched it at my kitchen table in full sun, and I could hear my own heart in my ears like it was in the room. And here's the thing I made myself do at that kitchen table that I wish to God I hadn't. I scrolled back. The app kept a week of clips. He was in every single one, not always in the doorway. Sometimes it was just an arm crossing the frame down the hall. Sometimes the top of his head moving low and slow along the floor. Sometimes a full minute of him standing exactly where he'd stood the first night. But every night, 2 in the morning, 2:30, 3, regular as a man clocking into a shift. The 11 minutes I'd found wasn't the night he decided to come down and watch me. It was just the one night the camera happened to be there for something he had already been doing, a few feet from my open sleeping face, for everything I now have to assume was the whole 2 months. I did not sleep in that house again. I told the police I thought somebody was getting in, and they were kind and a little bit bored, the way you'd expect, right up until I showed them the 11 minutes, and then nobody in that room was bored anymore. They came back with more people than I expected. They found it fast, because unlike me they knew to look up. Behind the bookshelf on the second floor landing there was a panel, and behind the panel a crawl space that ran the whole length of the house, over the bedrooms, and in it a man had built an entire life. A mattress with a fitted sheet, a camp lamp, a milk crate of food, and drilled down through the ceiling of my bedroom, directly over where my pillow was, there was a hole the width of a coin. The sawdust around it wiped clean and smooth from use, set at exactly the angle you would need to lie on your stomach up there and look down at a sleeping man's face. He went to prison. He had been in the house before I bought it. That is the detail that took the floor out from under me and never quite put it back. The auction, the year everyone called it empty, the inspection, the closing. The first night, I slept there proud of myself for the deal I'd gotten. He was already up there. I did not buy a house and get an intruder. I moved into his house, and I started sleeping where he could watch me. And he let me stay. Because a warm house with groceries walking in the front door every week is a better house than a cold, empty one, and all it cost him was the hours I had my eyes shut. I sold the house in 40 days for a loss I am still paying down. I lock my bedroom door from the inside now, every night, and my therapist and I both know that's pointing the lock the wrong way, that locking a door from the inside doesn't keep out something that's already above the ceiling, and I do it anyway. People ask why it wrecked me the way it did when he never laid a hand on me. This is the only way I've found to say it. There's a last place you believe nobody can follow you. It's the place behind your eyes. The second you finally let them close. He had already been there. He'd been there every night for 2 months. He took the one room I didn't even know I was still trying to keep locked.